here we are, right? Colleagues and friends, about to have hopefully a spirit-led conversation about a new vision for faith formation and discipleship, right? Within our context here in our ministry in the Archdiocese of Newark. So like both of you, I wear a lot of different hats, right? I work for the diocese and I work in parishes with parish pastoral councils. I'm involved in my local parish community and adult faith formation in other ways as a Eucharistic minister. But then I have that part-time gig as a parish catechetical leader. And even within that, right, directing the programs in grade 1 through 6, I'm also that catechist on Monday afternoon. And I sit with those amazing sixth graders. But in all of those experiences, really feeling and recognizing, right, that something needs to be different. We need to, given the signs of the times, and we could talk about all of those statistics that we are talking about now as a diocese, right? Those sacramental numbers that are down, the mass attendance, all of those other graphs and things and pie charts and line graphs that we've been looking at so intently through We Are as Witnesses in the last couple of weeks. But, and that tells us a story, and that kind of compels us, or should compel us in a particular way in our life, in our work. But it's really when I'm in front of those sixth graders, right, that I feel something different, that I know that it has to be different, that it can't be the traditional model that it's always been. Mm-hmm. So maybe you guys could introduce yourselves and your context in your ministry, and then we could kind of continue to talk about dream a little bit together. That's what I want our conversation to be, a dream.
Love it. Go ahead, Jen.
My name's Jennifer Benke. I'm the Associate Director for Evangelization here at the Archdiocese. I've been here about 4 years, and working in parishes. Recently finished a bunch of parish facilitations for We Are as Witnesses, which really changed the way, a lot of the ways I see and work. Before that I was in pastoral ministry, and I've been in liturgical music ministry since I was 13. And I, again, part-time gig, work in a parish as a part-time music minister in our next door neighbor parish, diocese. And I have a children's choir I see on Tuesdays at the same time, and an adult, volunteer adult ministry. And I work with the pastor to make our masses every week, try to be forming disciples as they're attending mass. So.
Wonderful. I'm Gina Butler, Associate Director for Catechist Formation and Catechesis in Catholic Schools. So I get the just the excitement of having one foot in the parishes and one foot in the Catholic schools, and just kind of like doing a dance between them both. And I love the different dynamics, and meeting really the different hearts that are involved in, both those arenas, right? But all being on mission together. So I do that. My background is really youth ministry for almost 20 years, and confirmation programs and coordinators and things like that, building teams. I'm life team trained. I've been a catechist since I was 25. So, and I really feel as though, when we look back on, how God has worked in our lives, that with a sense of humor, of course, that I really see how He shaped my heart before He really got in my head, and now there's a real understanding of that, as we move forward in this time in our church, and with our church and with the body of Christ, to just really know that it really has to reside in the heart, before it resounds in the mind. And with catechesis, it's critical now, so we can really see that relational understanding. So we have to look at people as belonging to God, and how are we relating to them? How are we accompanying them? Like, how are we witnessing to them? Like, what are our conversations like? So, you're both so heavily involved in that, and those arts and gifts that you bring forward. But what's beautiful is to just see both of you relating to people as you are in all of your different areas, of calling. They really are. They're all areas of calling. I just have to put on the personal note, because God works with all people He puts in our lives, but I get to be the primary caretaker of both my parents right now, who are 92, and that in and of itself is really beautiful, to see church in them and what church has been in them, right? So because we have to look at it as that intergenerational, intercultural, that's within each of us, when we call that. So I love that. So when we're thinking about the sixth graders, or we're thinking about who we're singing to, or who we're meeting in front of, it's such an incredible collection of an individual's experience, right? At all times. And that's who we're trying to get to know before we say, okay, who's God to you? You know what I mean? What's church to you? So So I love these conversations. So thank you for making this happen.
We have great conversations
Absolutely.
in the hallway, all of the time, right? But
desk
to be
front talks.
Exactly. But to have it in a little more formal way, rather than just right around because our offices are right in a row, right? So to be able to gather like this and talk about this. So one of the things you mentioned, right, is that knowing of the heart, right, and the recognizing of that in terms of the forming of disciples. And I feel that's a big shift in perspective at the parish level. For many of our parishes, I recognize that in my work with the different councils in the parishes. But in particular, when I'm at that parish on Monday afternoon and Sunday as the parish catechetical leader, right? The catechists, so many of them are here's the textbook, and here's the facts, and here's the knowledge that we need to memorize. So breaking away from that, what for many has become that traditional classroom models, kids sitting at desks in rows,
Head to heart,
moving from that. And so one of the things that really impacted me was I started reading The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer, and then I gave that to you, and right,
and then you told me to read it.
And then you told
I'm like,
so we're reading that right together. So, but one of the things that he writes in that for me, I was like, wow, right, this really speaks to that. He writes, behind the fearful silence, our students want to find their voices, speak their voices, and have their voices heard. A good teacher is one who can listen to those voices even before they are spoken, so that someday they can speak with truth and confidence. What does it mean to listen to a voice before it is spoken? It means making space for the other, being aware of the other, paying attention to the other, and honoring the other. So now, right, for me, I'm thinking about what is that sacred space in particular, because I'm that catechist on Monday afternoon. But I'm thinking, right, we need to change that whole dynamic, even with the youngest in our community, right? So the first and the second graders. And so I started to think about, because I am the parish catechetical leader, I can do more, not just with the sixth grade that I gather with, but even with the second grade, like their retreat. And as you know, it's great here because we gather the PCLs, right, from all the different counties, and we have these conversations. And I'm listening to them now, like, what do you do in the retreat? And now I'm thinking, like, everybody, it's kind of similar retreats that every parish does. And it seems to me that it's much more about, those retreats are much more about what I would say now is a rehearsal.
Mm.
Yeah.
What does the rehearsal look like for reconciliation or the sacrament of the first Eucharist? Like that, it's that. And I'm thinking that it needs to be different. We need to create a different space and a different understanding. We need to get to that heart rather than just the facts. This is what, when you get in front of Father, this is what you say, and let's practice memorizing the prayers.
There's two things in that quote that struck me, two words. One is someday, and the other is space. So what I loved about that quote is that someday, right? If I don't know if you want to read it again for the sake of.
Yeah. So behind the fearful silence, our students want to find their voices, speak their voices, have their voices heard. A good teacher is one who can listen to those voices even before they are spoken, so that someday they can speak with truth and confidence about their faith.
Yes. So someday, I think, is a critical understanding in there, because especially with young people who just developmentally, they don't have a sense of confidence. We're not talking about like the child who's walks in a room cartwheeling and says, "Hey, here I am." Like, we're talking about really the child who's just behind that fear, behind that silence, is fearing, how are people going to see me, right? Because they don't know who they are, right? They don't have that strength and that confidence. When they have somebody who can look in their eyes and meet them and see them for belonging to God, like just see them as this beautiful little person who hasn't emerged yet, and help them, journey with them, so that someday happens. That child will feel that peace and that patience with themselves to get to the someday. And a lot of times when a teacher, this is what I've observed, and I believe that a teacher, when having an academic focus in a class with children, there's an urgency. You have to learn this, know this, respond to this within this finite amount of time. Well, that's not Sunday, and that's not meeting a child who's hiding behind silence, and that's not creating a safe faith space for that child to eventually emerge into. So the someday is critical, because it says, I'm meeting you where you are right now, right? Just like Jesus would, just like he did, right? Just like he does countless times in the Bible, right? He meets people exactly where they are. There's all the patience in the world. Has he ever shown rushing ever? Right? When he meets people in the gospel, right? Ever.
Right, yeah.
Right? It's meeting, and it's saying, I got all the time in the world for you.
That's what I feel like in some of the, as I listen to the other PCLs talk about the retreats that they do for the second graders. It's almost like this rushing. We have these different stations, and you rush from one activity to the other, because we only have an hour, or maybe we have 2 hours, and we're just kind of going, and it's almost like this checking off of the box, right? We're going to practice the prayers, and then we're going to go in and we're going to see the space, and you're going to practice what you're going to say with Father, and that, right? And I think, so as I think about those retreat experiences, I think about creating a very different space and rhythm. So almost like when Sister Natalie was with us and gave the keynote at NCCL, right? She spoke about what a synodal catechesis might look like. but she talked about, even though she gave the keynote in that sort of lecture hall, she talked about what she really wanted to do was to take a walk first, right? So even that idea of maybe the kids go on a walk with Jesus outside, right? That understanding of anchoring them in that full creation, right? Drawing on inspiration from like Thomas Berry to say, right, we're part of this the enormity of the created universe, which I think kids connect in. Like the other day at the parish, the kids were so excited because they look out the window and there's 2 deer, right? So just observing those deer and just the awe and wonder and amazement, right, outside their window.
And,
right, and
yes.
that for them speaks of God.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
recognize God, and in our busyness, we've kind of become less attentive to that.
Well, but I also think that there's something, and I definitely appreciate the someday part of it, but it's the space before the voice. It's making the space before the voice. And for me, of course, voice as a musician, like that's, it's the only instrument that God created. Every other instrument in the planet has been created by God's inspiration into human hands. But our voices reside in our bodies. So when it says in the Bible, like, sing to the Lord, is it singing, or is it using our voice in resonance with Him? And I got that from something you said yesterday, because we have these conversations, right?
In the hallway.
Exactly. And I've been thinking about it. Like, I teach children's choir not because I want every kid to grow up to be a church musician or a solo singer. I want them to have the confidence that and the two, I always say, the first 2 things about using your voice, the secrets of using your voice are standing up straight and an easy breath in and an easy breath out. Everything else is training your ears. But for your voice, it's just standing up straight and taking an easy breath in and an easy breath out. And recently, I heard my new pastor asking one of my students, how do you like children's choir? And the student said, well, we sing for about half an hour, but the rest of it is really therapy. And it's not really therapy. I teach them how to pray. And sometimes we play games. Well, we're playing hopscotch because I'm teaching them how to feel a rhythm in their body. Or I'm teaching them to resonate and listen. Or, it's all these things that like take slowing down and take making that space and taking us working in unison and in communion and allowing for each person to develop at their own rate. Now, is there a Sunday liturgy? Is there a Christmas concert that I want to put on a good show for? Certainly. But are parents going to love it, whether it's messy and one kid sings off key, or whether it's, the Sistine Chapel cherub choir comes down and floats down from heavenly on high? They're going to love it either way. And that's really all that matters, is that every kid is able to move at their own pace in this learning how to resonate and hold space for God to enter in their journey.
I think both those elements would be a beautiful retreat experience, right? Like to be open to inviting them to seek God in their immediate environment, right? Like there has to be an invitation to help guide them through a question and just an invitation. What do you see? With a constant, with the little ones, like constant. I have to do this with my adults. A constant affirmation that there is no wrong answer. There is no wrong answer, right? There, just whatever you say is fine, right? Especially the little ones, they have to know, because they're so programmed, so young, right? That when they're learning, there is a regurgitation of information somehow, and we have to break that when it's faith oriented. We have to break that model, right? So, and a sensory experience. Like God made us this way. He made us. He made our bodies. He made us to experience. He made us with voice, so that resonance. So you could incorporate both of those in a retreat in a wonderful, fun way, and including the parents in it, because they need to be retreated even more than their kids. The kids are just going to be happy being there with mom and dad. Wow, mom and dad get to focus on me for how many hours are we going to be here? Hey, this is cool, right?
Yeah. So two things. Number one, Jen, I loved, right, that playful, the type of activity, right? That because we're experiencing in a different way, right? That playfulness. So one of the texts that we read for the class was, Courtney Gatto and this revelatory experiencing, right? And that we don't get to that through memorization of a textbook, but that playful nature of how we learn, how we kind of try different things, right? So the playing of the hopscotch or it's not really, it's how we learn to pray and how we learn to change the rhythm of life to become more attentive to the presence of God. And so that you're right, like the retreat that we do with them should be showing them different ways that they can, different habits and practices of faith, and not just for the kids,
right,
but something very countercultural for the parents, right? Again, so to begin with a walk outside in nature, right? That's a habit that they can take home with them and practice every day. But the walking and the praying, the being attentive to the world around them, to the nature and the beauty, and right, a different way maybe for them to start their day, and a different kind of prayer, right? Because we get used to the not that there's anything wrong, but the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Glory, like all of those are important, and in terms of our tradition and our faith, right, and our understanding of faith. But understanding, I had one of the second graders say to me, have sort of this enlightening moment. He kind of sat up and he said, "You mean we can just speak words and sometimes the words can be in here? Like you don't even have to say the words, right?" So to understand that prayer is more of it's a talk, right, with God, and that can take many different shapes and forms, right? And so slowing that rhythm down, not that, well, we have 15 minutes here and then we got to get to the next station in the retreat and move on. The other thing that you kind of touched on is that, like, I'm feeling like I want that opportunity for parents, for families and children to have those deeper conversations about faith. Like, what are the hopes? Why do we go through the sacraments? Why do you want the sacrament for your child? What does that really mean?
It's the why are we here?
Exactly, the why are they, and to have that conversation, and I feel like that might be the critical centerpiece, right? Getting rid of those desks and chairs, and then just gathering in a small group of maybe two families together, or maybe three, just sitting there and talking about what does this really mean, and in particular for reconciliation, talking about the enormity of God's love, the abundance of His love, right? If we could all just settle into that, it would change so much, I think, in our daily living, and the connecting of what we do at Mass and at worship and our life on Monday afternoon.
Right. So that's something that I think is really important for a reconciliation retreat, because let's just be honest, the majority of the families are not going to Mass. So the leader of that retreat may very well be the holiest person that child knows, maybe short of their grandmother, right? Like, right?
Yeah.
So in that, I think when asking them the question, like, why are we here, right? I think it's really important for that person, that leader of that retreat, to witness what they want for each of those children and the parents and their families, what they want for them, speaking from the heart. If I'm a retreat leader, it's like, what I desire for you is to know Jesus in this beautiful way that he desires to be known and to be experienced, right? So that right off the bat, we are setting the tone for relationship, right off the bat, right? So it's not, I don't give agendas for retreats. Nobody gets the agenda. The only one who has the agenda is the team, is the retreat team. Their number one job when they come as a retreater is to just receive and just be led, and just know that this is a safe faith space with all the desire in the world, to give to them the gifts God intends, whether or not that be love or that. And then those open like discussions that you're inviting them to see God in their environment or around them, it is critical that they're guided to see God in each other, right? So there are wonderful, very simple activities. And why is that so important? Because it starts that journey of identity. Reconciliation retreats have to be about, who am I to God? Like, how did he form me? Why did he form me? I belong to God. If they get an understanding of their own identity in relationship to God, in reconciliation, then when you move on to a Eucharistic retreat with it, you can focus on who is God. But you have to start with, who am I? That's just human, right?
But I think that's really a very different perspective, because I think oftentimes, or as I listen to other PCLs, they're talking about their retreat is very focused on, here's the 10 commandments, and did I break one of those 10 commandments, and sin in that way, rather than what is my identity, why am I formed, who am I in relationship, right, to God. That's a very different.
So I love that. I love all of this. I want to talk a little bit about an experience, because you brought up linking that also to the liturgical life of the church, and not just for students, not just for the little ones, but for their parents as well. So when I teach a new song, and especially if it's in Latin, I make the kids learn what it means in English, right? Like that's just good teaching. You don't teach somebody something in a foreign language and then just leave them to interpret it on their own. So we sing this song as a children's choir, and we do it for an adult choir, and it's our Advent refrain is Lux Mundi tenebras dissipa et corda nostra illumina. Light of the world, scatter the darkness and illuminate our hearts. And that's our whole focus for Advent, because the light of the world is coming in to the world, right? So I use this, I've used it for years. I make posters about it. Every year we're singing this song, right? And this year I had the children's choir, the adult choir at the same Mass. It was the first time they were going to be prepared, and they were going to sing it as an offertory. And Father calls me the night before, "Oh, Jennifer, I completely forgot, on Christ the King, it's the rite of welcoming for our OCIA candidates. Completely forgot. Could you sing something, because there's God love us, there's 8 of them, adults, coming into full communion at Easter Vigil. Could you sing something while I'm blessing their foreheads?" And I said, simple refrain, yes. So I said, yes, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm an excellent music minister because I just happen to have this prepared. And God says to me, pokes me on the shoulder at 5 minutes to 10 and says, go tell them. Go tell the candidates walked over to the front pew with their sponsors and I said, I'm so glad you're here. I just want to welcome you. We are going to sing a refrain over you as you are being anointed. It's in Latin. This is the text. Light of the world, scatter the darkness and illuminate our hearts. This is my prayer for you.
Oh, I love it.
From now through Easter Vigil, that you develop that personal relationship with Jesus, that he comes in and takes the darkness out of your heart, whatever it is, and he fills you with his light. That's all I can give you this morning. We're so happy right now.
But see, that's a beautiful retreat element right there. I think in normal planning, right, we tend to think, okay, I'm going to cover all of these topic areas and I'm going to do it with a big block of time. When do I have a big block of time? Okay, I have it on retreat. And we stuff it into the retreat, right? That's not what a retreat is for, right? Like we meet with our kids, right, in our sessions, and we know we try to say, okay, my goal is maybe they can have more understanding of these 3 topics, let's just say, in any given faith formation session, right? A retreat should not be about information. It should be about encounter. It's got to be where you truly are all coming together as that little body of Christ and you're experiencing and encountering each other. What a beautiful element to be able to have on that retreat, then to bring and invite them into a sacred space and an exchange of voice, right? Because in that retreat, we get to sit there and bask in the gifts that God gives us. And our voice, like you're saying, is our instrument. It's our, I know you've said this before, it was absolutely beautiful. We have unique fingerprints where we have a unique voice that has stayed with me, right? So let's celebrate those beautiful gifts that God gives us in our own formation. So I would not be doing what are the 10 Commandments during a retreat. That is a very good gathering topic in sessions. Plus reinforcement at home. Mom and dad can help with that, right? Yes, it's very important. But that retreat is this beautiful way of being showered with the gifts that God wants to give them in relationship. It's encountering that sacred space. Yes, it's very important. The kids need to be comfortable with that sacred space. So if they haven't been in church, you got to bring them to the church, right? Like church tours are a very wonderful way of doing that, where you might end up in the confessional area, right? But I think that's so important, is all opportunities to affirm in that way. Yeah. And one more thing, like when I think tangible and things that are documented are really important for reinforcement on retreats, so that the family doesn't just leave going, oh, that was great. Why? I don't know, but it was really great. Like we have to form the takeaways in kind of and we know this, our culture is very fast. The information is overwhelming. We've become effective receptors for all that information, and a lot of time it makes us all just feel like overstimulated, right, and overinformed. So very, very important, and this is, I know, a very practical element, is to have an affirmation board, like must an affirmation board, where if the children or the families, or however way you invite the families to witness to seeing God either in their outside environment, like you had mentioned, looking out the window, or in what they hear, or how they experience a sacred song in the English, and then in the Latin, not even understanding it, but how does it make you feel? Like a musical Lectio Divina, Visio Divina, like is really what we're talking about. And then how do we see God in each other? But it has to be written down.
Right.
Because they learn they have to write it, they have to hear it, and they have to see it.
Right.
And if those 3 are covered, then what I've seen is parents getting so into it. Now, whether or not it's a board or they have an individual collage board that they get to make, then display before they leave, because the look at me is really important with the little ones. Look at me, like, right? And then they get to bring that home and display it in a special sacred place that they have formed at home. There's taking that safe faith space that you've created together and bringing that and putting it into what home should be.
Right.
Home should also be a sacred faith space, right? And then they can carve something out. That could be a prayer table where they, that they develop together.
Right.
So
to take it home and
Yes.
connect and,
Yes.
and live it out.
because what we're doing
Yeah.
that's really difficult is we compartmentalize. Like that's what we naturally are doing, right? Information makes us linear, and in that linearity, to understand it, we compartmentalize. So when we're not going to mass and we're not developing that sacred space at home, what are we doing? We're telling our kids, you get God when you go here, and that's it. So we have to help build all of those channels and those bridges, in those spaces and everywhere. Because what's our ultimate goal? Is to have that space within ourselves. That's what it is, right? Like within ourselves. So
thank you so much for the
Oh,
conversation, and we got to keep talking in the hallway.
Absolutely.
yes, love it.